With every career comes its positives and negatives, especially in the mental health fields and healthcare fields, where the rewards of helping others comes at the high cost of stress and low wages. In the mental health fields, especially social workers, the biggest psychological drawback comes from burnout and secondary traumatic stress. Of course, nurses and doctors face this too, but the key difference is the fact that there is less research in mental health fields. In Laura van der Noot, Lipsky, and Connie Burke's Trauma Stewardship, they read about how a lot of social workers don't even know that they're experiencing secondary traumatic stress or burnout until they are deep within their own traumas, or they are pointed out by their loved ones. We've all experienced burnout one way or another, whether it was a stack of assignments that has no end in sight, or a slew of 40-plus hour work weeks that seem to be taking their toll. However, what do you do when your job requires you to give your undivided attention to your clients and cases, harboring your own emotional exhaustion along with their lifelong traumas? Today, I will be talking about STS and burnout amongst social workers and the laws that need to be put in place in order for them to promote the prevention and intervention of this happening in these fields. By the end of this presentation, you will see why this is important to us as a society and the necessary action taken in order to prevent this later on in the future. My three main points today will be how are social workers experiencing burnout in STS, at what percentages are social workers experiencing burnout in STS, and why this matters. With the introduction aside, let's get into my first point. How are social workers experiencing burnout in STS? Some common misconceptions are the fact that only healthcare workers can experience this, when in reality, anyone really can, and it's especially prevalent in social work because the main symptoms are hypervigilance, chronic exhaustion, avoidance, irritability and anger, fear, and guilt. If this sounds familiar, these are actually the symptoms of PTSD, as STS is also commonly known as secondhand PTSD. Child welfare and domestic service providers are the most at-risk social workers to contract these conditions because of the unpredictability of their job and the lack of impact that they have on their clients, as they already are receiving clients who are incredibly traumatized. Along with this, high competition rates in the mental health field for resources and funding cause high stress caseloads and less ability to be mindful of the symptoms of STS and less capable of taking care of themselves as they work to compete. And now that we see that social workers, how they are experiencing burnout and STS, let's go into the percentages. So as I said before, there's little research done on mental health and mental health people and professionals in this field, which makes it difficult to find any sort of concrete data or research to back things up outside of individual investigations and surveys, which is also driving into the issue of burnout within these people. For example, an investigation in 2015 had 1,359 participants that said that 73% of them were experiencing high levels of stress, burnout, and STS symptoms. Along with that, a survey in 2007 said that 40% out of these somewhat 300 participants were experiencing STS symptoms such as intrusive thoughts and physiological effects from those intrusive thoughts. Along with this, we have the high turnover rates from the graph that show that with these high burnout and STS rates, we're having a high level of turnover in our staff, which leads me to my next point, why this matters. This matters for us because our social workers are at the forefront of trauma issues. Every atrocity, disaster, and everyday crime, social workers are there in order to help and to facilitate healing. With these high turnover rates, clients are not receiving the service that they need or the quality of service that they need. We need these Child Protective Services, Department of Social Services, sexual assault services, domestic violence, and even hospital social workers in order to facilitate societal healing. Without the qualified and experienced social workers in these positions, society will not have the capability of healing the way that it needs to. As of right now, there are no OSHA laws requiring employee burnout for mental health, healthcare, or even everyday people like us, and there's not even a lot of research to facilitate the pushing of these laws. So, for my first request, I would like you to send an email to our Senator, Jason Brodeur, at myfloridahouse.gov detailing what we've learned today about social work, STS, and burnout, and telling him why we need laws in place in order to prevent that for our social workers and even for ourselves. And if that's a bit too much, you can also call OSHA at 800-321-6742, asking for the law inclusion of employee burnout policies to protect them, our frontline, both nurse, doctors, and especially emotional frontline workers, social workers, from burnout to help society continue on healing from the things that happen every day, and to even help us who are being burnt out working in this trying time. I hope you've learned a lot today, and thank you so much.